So, as you may have seen from the title, this is a what if scenario where the scepter actually worked. If you think about it, it doesn't actually make sense for it not to have worked. Or for him not to have tried a different spot. But let's say that it did. Or he tried a different location. Hello there, how video Vivo. Welcome. Hello, the Wind 3773. Thank you for to whoever just left a like. Sal G8D. Welcome. The Wind could be better, could be worse. Paul Johnson 1662. How are you? Thank you for the sub. So yeah. This is, of course, talking about that scene during the Avengers when Loki, thank you to whoever just gave a like. Thank you so much. This topic for this stream is about what would happen if during that little exchange, thank you so much for the 3 likes, what would happen if when he taps his chest with the scepter, it actually worked and made him put him under Loki's control. In all honesty, I don't think much would have changed. I don't think it would have been that big of a deal because the new armor that he unveils following that is not gonna be a problem for the Hulk to deal with, is not gonna be a problem for Thor to deal with. Captain America would have problems. But then there's also another thing to consider. Jarvis. Once Tony would put on the new armor and start attacking the Avengers, Jarvis would likely intervene, and knowing Tony, he probably would have put in some kind of protocol to where it would say, you know, if at any point in time I do something that I wouldn't ordinarily do, you take full control and you basically lock me out. I think that's something he definitely would have implemented, especially in his later suits. Because, you know, he's still a drinker, and we know that alcohol can cause all sorts of things to happen. And he would have wanted to be more careful. I could also see, depending on when he was designing this armor, that he might have known about the scepter. Heck, you could even say there was a scene or a moment off screen, because we obviously didn't see every single moment, every single minute of that situation as if it was, you know, a real day. Chris Martin, hello. You could even argue that he may have had a conversation with Jarvis and said, "Look, if at any point he tries to use that scepter on me to take control of me, I'm giving you full permission to basically lock me out of the suit, and you'll know this that I've been taking control of because I'll start attacking everyone. That's part of our team. And I think that's what would have happened. He puts a new one on, flies through the window, immediately starts to attack. Or Jarvis notices that he's preparing to use, to use the suit to attack. Um, one of the Avengers, or all of them, and immediately takes control. Now, this wasn't one of the later suits which can basically pilot itself, unfortunately. Um, which means, you can't kick him out. You can't, Jarvis couldn't have the armor fly down, open up, let Tony out, and then the armor would continue to fight under the command of Jarvis. But he could still do stuff while Tony is, under the effects of that scepter. I also think it's entirely possible that Jarvis have deduced a way to break him out of its spell. I'm not sure what that would be. Maybe a loud noise, maybe something. Maybe, and I'm not sure if the suit would be able to do this, but maybe he could even somehow, like, make Tony go to sleep? And then wake him up. But anyway, regardless, he's not going to be a threat for, honestly, well, the only ones he's going to be a threat for, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Captain America. Um, the problem is, however, that Hulk's obviously not gonna stand down, right? Like, if he sees this, it does. Hulk is Hulk. If anyone rushes at him and tries to attack him, he's gonna respond. He's gonna hit back, and he would just demolish that suit. Like, he would just completely destroy that new suit of armor. And probably not know enough to stop before he potentially takes Tony's life at the same time. Um. Which, of course, means that that missile that gets sent in to deal with the problem doesn't get taken into space unless Thor somehow thinks of it, which I doubt he would. Um, and I mean, this is not possible, but I don't think, Hulk could grab onto it even if he thought to and, like, absorb, because that's not something he can do as far as I'm aware. He can't absorb radiation, like, as a power. He can't just, like, suck it up, if that makes any sense. So they're pretty much done at that point. Um, the missile goes off, and Tony dies because, he and Cap definitely die. I don't know about Thor. He probably lives because of what happens in Infinity War, many, movies later, where he literally gets hit by a star and survives. So Hulk's gonna be fine. So, and obviously Black Widow and Hawkeye are not gonna be okay. So you've just taken out every single member of the Avengers, with the only exceptions being Thor and Hulk. And there's no reason why Thanos wouldn't at that point just decide, okay, you wiped out my army, but you also wiped out most of the individuals that were trying to stop my army. Which means he wins. Now, I don't know. Maybe Loki gets taken out by the explosion, or is just seriously injured, and then Thanos has to send someone else, like one of the what do they call them again? The Black Order? What is it? Maul and all them? I can't remember their names. Maybe at that point he sends one or all of them down to just get the stone and be gone from the earth, and then years later shows up, you know, with the fully, with all the stones in set into the gauntlet, and then does everything that he was going to do in Infinity War. The problem is now, like, there's no Iron Man. I don't know if this would change well, no, actually it would change events quite a lot, because if there's no Black Widow and there's no song, then I don't think Hulk leaves the planet, because even if we were to because Ultron's not going to be a thing. And if it wasn't for Ultron, and it wasn't, if it wasn't for him, then he wouldn't have convinced the siblings to the twins. Are they twins? Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. He wouldn't have convinced them to side with him. So Scarlet Witch is not gonna do her mind control thing on Hulk, and so he's not gonna leave. So I guess at some point he just goes back to being Banner and notices that everyone is gone with the exception of himself and Thor. And the city is pretty much just wiped. Now, what I think would happen at this point is War Machine basically takes Tony's place. And Bruce, along with Jarvis, basically decides, okay, you're Iron Man now. I didn't build this stuff, but I'm a fellow scientist. I know Tony Stark, and with Jarvis's help, maybe we can continue to build Iron Man suits for you, and you can just use them. Or we can just upgrade your War Machine suit to be as advanced as the Iron Man suits, but they won't have the same coloring. And maybe he doesn't have like those bulky weapons loaded onto it. Maybe, they're more discreet. Um, and so he joins the team, and you know, the only real thing that was setting War Machine apart from Iron Man is the differences in advancement, right? The War Machine suit was always less advanced than the Iron Man one. Um, but if he has the most advanced tech, then he's in a weird way gonna be even more capable because he's got the military training too, right? Um, so yeah, um, Captain America's gone. Nick Fury is not gonna be making it through the events of Winter Soldier because Captain America's not there and Black Widow's not there, and so they probably win. And the threat of the next Avengers movie would have basically been Shield, who is really Hydra. Um, Thor probably steps in, and I actually know the villain of that would basically be the Winter Soldier with Shield, which I hate to say it, but Rhodes, Hulk, and Thor probably decimate them. And then just completely destroy what's left of Shield, and Civil War doesn't happen because Ultron doesn't happen. So, and I doubt the whole Accords are going to be put into motion just because of what happened at New York. It took a series of events for that to occur. Um, so I think what happens, or in what would have to be significantly changed, Infinity War story is Black Panther shows up. Now, since T'Chaka doesn't lose his life, or maybe he still does lose his life. I don't know. Maybe Winter Soldier still targets him. Um, but I doubt it because Zemo's home wasn't destroyed by Ultron, so he wouldn't have a reason to be angry at the Avengers and whatnot and want revenge. So maybe he still lives, but decides like you're gonna be Black Panther because I'm too old to do it. Um, and so the events of Black Panther would more or less be T'Chaka's still around, he's still king. I don't know if you can step down from being king. Maybe you can. Maybe he can say, hey, I'm throwing in the towel and my son will be king until the next ceremonial battle takes place, and then T'Challa obviously wins that, and the events of that movie are more or less unchanged. Although maybe with his father being there, maybe Killmonger gets revenge on his uncle, and in a rage, I guess T'Challa just decides to take him out. Um, I can imagine like nothing would happen with Doctor Strange that would still go, you know, go off as intended. But with Thanos having every stone that was on the planet Earth, he has no reason to go there anymore. So, nobody fights him, I guess. I guess he gets all the stones and then just boom, does it. Uh, and nobody has any idea as to why that happened. Um, uh, so I guess what would happen from this point forward is the Avengers are now, um, somehow, some way, without the events of Civil War taking place, they'd still meet. So the Avengers now becomes War Machine, Hulk, Thor, Black Panther, Ant Man, and I don't think Scarlet Witch ever goes to join them. Maybe that happens, and then she and Quicksilver join the team, so I guess they're in. Um, Tony's not there to recruit Peter Parker, so I don't know if Spider-Man joins. He probably shows up to help, but doesn't really really make a difference. I could see an interesting plot point in which Ross, you know, who's what Secretary of State, I could see him being like, okay, we need serious help. And I know this isn't going to make any sense to anyone, but let's just say he decides to become Red Hulk at that point. And so he joins. Maybe he has like a brawl with Bruce, with Hulk. Um, because it's his initial reason for doing it. Like, I don't trust him, so maybe he's thinking he'll take down the Hulk and then replace him as a member of the Avengers. um, or maybe he decides, like, okay, I'm gonna swallow my pride and just fight alongside of him. And then you've obviously got, oh wait, what am I talking about? Strange isn't around. I don't remember if Ross would have been around after the snap. Um, huh. So the only Avengers you would have would be Rhodes, Thor, and Hulk. um, that's interesting. Oh, and Ant-Man. So they don't try the whole time travel thing because they literally can't without Tony because he's the one that figures it out. So I guess life just continues. Um, and maybe they recruit new heroes. I mean, Captain Marvel probably shows up at some point um, to find out what happened, but they don't know where to find Thanos, so she's not going to be able to go after him. Um, Although, if Tony Stark's not around, does that mean that the future in which they do win is significantly changed? Because it kind of hinged on him being alive to figure out time travel, right? So, in this universe or this reality, maybe would 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 the power of the time stone be? Wait a minute. No, 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 no. That's right. Um, yeah, Strange is pretty much toast. Because if it wasn't for Tony and Peter together, he would have either surrendered the stone or he would have just lost his life. And then yeah, so they don't win in this scenario at all. Strange is gone. I Wong survives, right? He doesn't get like disintegrated. So he becomes Sorcerer Supreme as usual. And then he probably helps out the Avengers from time to time. But they are seriously lacking in manpower. um, I mean, sure, he still probably becomes Black Panther. Um, yeah, she definitely would. There'd be more of a need for it because her brother vanished with, you know, a certain portion of the planet, and yeah, she does so earlier. Um, Hello, Leo Ficag. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So yeah, that's probably what happens. Uh, there's no way of knowing whether or not any of the members that would become the Fantastic Four would have been snapped. Um, and I don't want to assume that they would have all made it. So let's say that at least one or two of them are still around. But wait a minute. Did Fantastic Four take place in the past, or was that did that take place in modern times? No, that took place in modern times, obviously. Yeah, okay. but they don't become the Fantastic Four because I mean, unless they, go on the same mission that they do, and um, two other people join the team somehow, and they become the replacements of whoever would have would whoever would have been snapped. Um, but at this point, I think it's probably just going to be the Fantastic Two. Um, and that's assuming that Reed isn't the one that isn't one of the ones that gets snapped away. So basically, at this point, Galactus shows up, and the Avengers have to fight Galactus, which is what I wanted to happen, just not under these circumstances. Um, what's ironic is, had Thanos known about Galactus, I feel like he would have held off on his plan for a bit, and this is gonna sound really strange, but like showed up to help them get rid of Galactus, and then carry on with his plan because he didn't want to destroy the Earth. He just wanted to, in his eyes, save them. And Galactus completely destroying the Earth goes against that plan. So Thanos fighting with the Avengers to fight off Galactus? And then they just get clobbered by him, and he does his man. Doom doesn't happen, or at least not in the same way, because there's no Franklin, right? Even if Sue survived, she's, if she falls in love and has a kid, she's not a powered individual, so the child's not gonna be special. Um, so maybe Doom's plan in this scenario, assuming he didn't get snapped, is, and also assuming that he's not an alternate, which I think he is. Um, in this scenario, maybe he decides to go after the Infinity Stones too and use magic to go back in time to collect them? Because without the events of Endgame happening, there's no multiverse. Um, Also, Multiverse of Madness obviously doesn't happen. I don't know if that, what's her name, American Chavez or whatever. I don't know if she, is around. But anyway, I think we should rewind a bit and look at this from a different perspective. Okay, let's say that somehow, some way, um, Jarvis still does what Tony did when the missile came in and grabs it and flies it off into space. Because, again, I don't think there's any way that Thor would have been able to handle that, even if he knew it was coming. he's probably going to try to hit it. Now, if he does hit it, because the way those missiles work is it's not like something hits the missile and it goes off. No, you have to hit another button to basically cause it to explode. So maybe he hits the missile and knocks it out of the air, and it falls basically harmlessly to the ground. Um, in this scenario, the wormhole doesn't close. Well, I mean, maybe it does still close, but the army is not destroyed. Um, and pretty much nothing else changes. Maybe there ends up being a plot line where the people don't trust the government because they just saw that a missile was being sent in to take out those alien forces, but it was going to basically sacrifice them as well. And so maybe there ends up being a movie where they have to fight to gain back the respect of the people and their trust. And that involves Captain America and the Avengers basically going around and trying to do that. It might even put a lot more tension on to Shield and lead to that whole Hydra thing being unveiled sooner. Um, which, if we're being completely honest, like let's say that Cap and Widow and Falcon, like there's no way in which Hydra's plan works out because let's say they do succeed in silencing Captain America somehow, some way. You know what that's gonna do? It's gonna basically lead to Tony Stark vowing his revenge on you. And he's gonna figure out what's going on. Probably with the help of Fury. And Iron Man, I would say, is honestly more frightening of a foe to have than Captain America. Because regardless of what happens in Avengers and what happens with him and his trauma from that experience, he's still going to be upgrading his tech and building better and better armor suits. At that point, he'd probably be able to like take down a significant portion of Shield's forces, which is obviously not going to be good for them. And Bucky's going to be toast. There's no way he's challenging Iron Man. I don't care what was seemingly suggested in Civil War. No, in an actual fight, no, he's taking him down. Especially since he's not going to be holding back. He was clearly holding back in that fight because of because of Steve. But if Steve isn't around, no, he's just going to unload everything and just take out Winter Soldier. And Hydra's not going to be a problem for him. Like he's not going to be afraid of them. He's going to be able to protect himself easily. If God forbid the fight takes longer than expected, and it's basically him and Rhodes, along with Fury's people taking the fight to Shields, then I guess Thor at some point would show up as well as Hulk, and then they would just completely destroy them. Um, I'm kind of looking at Captain America Winter Soldier as if it was Iron Man Winter Soldier. um, so yeah, uh, I guess that pretty much does it. Um, Thank you for hanging with me, as usual. Leaving a like, commenting. With all that being said, if you liked any of what you heard, please consider leaving a like, commenting when this stream becomes public, and subscribing. The truth is, I am Iron Man.